Hello, everybody. Good evening. I hope this finds you well. So as we established in the previous class on the listening module, that there are basically two different types of IELTS tests for IELTS general as well as IELTS academic, right? हमने बात की applicability के बारे में. So we established that IELTS general is mainly, see, what is IELTS? IELTS is an English proficiency test. So if you're applying abroad, be it in UK, in US, Australia, Canada, pretty much anywhere all over the world, right? They are going to make sure that you have a certain level of proficiency in English. And for that, they're going to assess you, right? It could be in the form of IELTS, it could be in the form of GRE in the case of states, it could be in the case of TOEFL or GMAT or other internal tests such as PPP test, BCU test, depending on which university you're going for. Like I said before, IELTS एक ऐसा टेस्ट है जिसको universally accept किया जाता है, right? Just like English is a global language, similarly IELTS is the globally popular and accepted English proficiency test. And if you get a decent score in that, normally that is minimum 6.5 with no less than 6, you can pretty much make it in a lot of the top ranked universities out there in literally every part of the world. So it has been a while, and hopefully now we can have these sessions on a more regular basis. So in the previous lecture, we talked about the listening module. So today's class, I'm going to be talking about the reading module. We're going to look at it basically from the perspective of both general as well as the IELTS academic tests. So without further ado, in the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, let us get kickstarted with our today's agenda. Now, first of all, as I said in the very beginning of this lecture, there are two different types of students, right? So for example, there are people who are going abroad for immigration purposes, for seeking permanent residency, right? In that case, they are strongly recommended to go for IELTS general. वो लोग जो वो हजरात जो पढ़ने के लिए बाहर जा रहे हैं, be it an undergrad, be it a master's degree, or be it some other sort of education, in that case you have IELTS academic, okay? Now, in the listening class, I established that the IELTS listening test is the same for both IELTS general tests as well as IELTS academic tests. However, IELTS reading varies for both. So what am I really trying to say over here is that IELTS general has its own reading paper, whereas IELTS academic will have its own reading paper. Now, in this presentation, we will look at a general overview of both types of reading tests in a way that we can do justice to them and discuss the basic components of these reading tests, as well as examine some shortcut techniques that will hopefully help us ace this exam in better detail. So the very first aspect of this presentation is going to be a critical analysis of IELTS general reading as well as IELTS academic reading modules. All right. So in this slide, I'm going to point out some noticeable similarities as well as a few differences that set general reading apart from academic reading. So first of all, in both cases, the duration of the exam is 1 hour, that is 60 minutes. All right. Secondly, no extra time will be allocated to the candidate. You have 1 hour in which you have to note down your details on the answer sheet, for example, the date, your name, your registration number, right? And along with that, the center number, and then you just, read the whole question paper, you figure out the answers to the questions, and then you jot them down on the answer booklet, all within 1 hour, that is 60 minutes, but there being no extra time. So please be very mindful of that. Next up, there are 3 reading passages in total. So what is a reading passage? A reading passage is a block of information, a chunk of information that might be divided in different paragraphs, such as 5 or 6 paragraphs. You will go through that information in those paragraphs in that particular reading passage. And on the basis of that information in the reading passage, you will be attempting the questions, okay? In total, for both general and academic reading, you have a total of 3 reading passages. So far, we have observed the similarity between the general as well as the academic reading, but now we're actually going to talk about some fundamental differences between the two tasks. So in general reading, the nature of the information in the reading passage is more social or more general, okay? For example, it could be based on a certain conversation in a restaurant, okay? In general reading, okay, it could be based on a shopkeeper's perspective of a certain product, okay? Something that is pretty much happening on a daily basis, right? On a day-to-day basis. However, when it comes to academic reading, these passages are based on more technical, more academic, more complex, as well as more specialized themes, right? So in general reading, you have 40 questions in total, which are approximately equally divided between the 3 reading passages. Okay, and the same goes for academic reading as well. For example, in total there are 40 questions. So reading passage 1 would be concerned with questions, let's say 1 to 30. Reading passage 2 could be concerned with, let's say, questions 4 into 26, whereas reading passage 3 could be concerned with, let's say, questions 27 to 40. So they're more or less equally split or segregated between the 3 reading passages. All right. I really hope that everyone has understood the difference in the information. So social and general themes, that is simple day-to-day topics, whereas academic reading has more technical topics. For example, information on, let's say, a certain master's dissertation, greenhouse effect, global warming, right? Some other sort of technical stuff, right? Such as, for example, the Great Resignation, COP26, in the context of Glasgow, if we talk about that. So these are the scenarios. Now, to the second last component of our slides, each question carries 1 mark. Therefore, the 40 questions are equivalent to 40 marks, and the marks that you obtain out of 40, they're converted into band scores. All right, so each question carries 1 mark. Therefore, 40 questions are equivalent to a maximum of 40 marks. The marks that you get out of 40, they're automatically converted, scaled, transmuted, transformed, whatever word you want to use, right? They're basically converted into band scores, with the highest band score being 9 and the lowest band score being 0, which hopefully no one gets right. So that being said and done, next up we move to the final component of this particular slide of the presentation. That is, there is no negative marking in the paper. Being an engineering student, this was a curse that I was fairly accustomed to in my early days. So the good thing is there is no negative marking. So what is negative marking? So you attempt a question, and let's say that the answer is incorrect. You not only lose that mark, but since you attempted that question incorrectly, an extra penalty will be imposed on you. Therefore, it could be, for example, 0.25 marks. So instead of losing 1 mark, you'll be losing 1.25, in which that 0.25 will be that extra incurred penalty. So the good thing over here is there's no negative marking. So in case you attempt the question and you get it right, you get the mark. If you attempt it wrong, at worst, you just end up losing that mark. There'll be no extra mark that will be deducted from your result as a penalty, which is actually good. This is a big positive sign for us, because no negative marking means that we can actually attempt each and every question at will. Okay, so this is actually a critical analysis of IELTS general reading and academic reading modules. Obviously, when I'll be uploading these videos on the YouTube forum, you're most welcome to discuss any queries that you have in the comment section. It will be my pleasure to get to it in a while. All right, thank you. So now, that being said and done, having given this exam myself in the past, let me share some pro tips, some secret recipes, some shortcut techniques that really helped me do justice to the IELTS reading module. I did academic, but be it general, be it academic, these tips, they're fairly applicable to both components of the reading test. सबसे पहले पॉइंट के ऊपर अगर हम चले तो वो आप यहाँ देख लें. You do not need to know about the topic. All answers are in the reading text. No additional background knowledge will be brought into the picture or the equation. In other words, simply stick to what is given to you. Okay, for example, you're reading a passage that is based on the topic of, let's say, thermodynamics or mass transfer or instrumentation and process design, right? Even if you don't have any background knowledge about it, it's fine. If you do have background knowledge, it doesn't matter, okay? We only need to concern ourselves with what is postulated in the reading passage. So we simply use that information in the passage to get to our answers. We do not bring anything from the outside into the picture, okay? So just stick to the script, simply use what is given to you. That is the very first tip. The second tip is infer, but do not assume. All right, a lot of IELTS teachers will actually be saying this to you, and I really agree with that. Infer, but do not assume. Here, it is very important for us to be aware of the fundamental difference between an inference and an assumption. So what is an inference? You have a piece of information that is given to you. You go through that information, you analyze it, you scrutinize that in depth, and on the basis of that information, you try to come up with your conclusion or your comments or your remarks on that. Assumption means bringing something from the outside, something that is beyond what is given to you. Since we only have to stick with what is given to us, there is no room over here for bringing any sort of assumptions in. Therefore, all we have to do is infer. You are given the passage, आप उसको पढ़ें, और उसको पढ़ने के बाद आप अपना तज्जिया उसके basis पे कर लें. All right. Number 3, don't write more words or answers than the question requires. Always follow the instructions. All right. For example, if the instruction says, Do not write more than 2 words. It means that 2 words is the upper limit. You cannot exceed the upper limit. Okay, you can either write 1 word or you can write 2 words at max. Similarly, if they say write 2 words only, in this case, your answer can only comprise of 2 words. Okay, so it's very important for us to pay emphasis to the instructions, right? Sometimes in our haste, in our deliberation to just get done with the paper, what we do is we just try to hasten a tad bit, right? And in the end of the day, what happens is we just overlook some important details, because of which we end up not doing justice to our exams, right? So make sure you always follow the instructions. All right. Number 4, don't make silly mistakes. Very important. Okay. What are silly mistakes? Errors that are related to syntax, grammar, punctuations, spellings, failure to follow instructions. You see, fellows, there are actually like 2 types of mistakes. Okay, there are technical mistakes. Okay, for example, there's a certain word whose meaning you don't know, or maybe you're running out of time. You do not have the mental resources to do justice to that particular topic or paragraph. So in that case, it is understandable if you lose marks. Okay, but I'm talking 2 to 3 months of preparation, hard work, lots of money going in this expenditure, lots of expenditures going in this mission, right? And you still end up making silly mistakes. That is not excusable, right? That is not acceptable if you talk about it from a professional viewpoint, right? So a silly mistake could be that you made a mistake in the spelling. So for example, the spelling is octopus, right? So you wrote Octopas instead of the correct form, that is Octopus, right? The instruction said write 1 word. You ended up writing a number or 2 words instead of 1 word, right? So these are some silly mistakes, which means that you're basically throwing your marks away. And they often attribute their origin to a poor concentration level, a hurry to complete the exam, or sometimes insufficient sleep. So make sure you get your sleep fully, make sure you have a full proper night's sleep before you attempt your exam. Just make sure that you're hydrated, make sure you've had a proper meal, just make sure you are fully focused, just switch off everything else that is happening in your background and just focus on this as if your life depends on it, okay? That will eliminate the prospect of making silly mistakes. Finally, we need to, like I said before, no extra time will be allocated. We are dealing with a time frame of 60 minutes, that is 1 hour. So we have to operate within that stipulation only. So make sure that you use your time wisely, transfer answers correctly, and most importantly, give clarity to your answers. That A should appear as an A. It should not be mistaken as an O, because examiners sometimes they really get, pissed off, and they sometimes won't really end up giving you the benefit of the doubt, right? So don't give them an excuse to take your marks away, all right? Thank you. Next up, learn synonyms. Okay, so for example, in the reading passage, it says intelligent, and in the question, let's say it says smart. You don't need to panic, okay, because intelligent and smart are the same things. Similarly, happy, jovial, arrogant, condescending. Okay, so these are some synonyms. Feel free to reach out to me in the comment section. There is this simple book that I used to go through before I gave my official exam, 501 Synonyms and Antonyms by Bridget MC Dermott. It really helped me in terms of acing my, in terms of acing the exam. Number 7, when faced with shortage of time, you stick with the first answer. Always go with your first instinct. Attempt all questions since there is no negative marking. Because see, fellas, what happens is that no matter how much you study, no matter how many practice tests you get crammed in yourself before the official exam, time management, you're always gonna face a bit of challenges from that department, right? And sometimes pressure gets to you. It's the last 2 minutes and the vigilator is asking everyone to just tie up their work and just submit it, right? Sometimes what happens is you are confused. You feel like there are 2 or 3 questions that you haven't had the time to do proper research in the passage, and you are kind of confused as to whether or not you should go for, you're confused as in what you think is the right answer. So in this case, the first idea that comes in your mind, just go for it. This obviously doesn't mean that you don't revise. Obviously, if you have time, do the revision, do your research, just look at the past from another perspective. Maybe you missed out on something. Okay, maybe that will help you, clear up your mind. Maybe help you get a new idea out of that. But in case that doesn't happen, simply stick with the first answer. Go with your first instinct in these high pressure situations. And trust me, 95% of the times your first instinct does turn out to be right. Okay, it's okay if you don't take my word for it. Feel free to experiment. Trust me, that is the drill. And once again, like I said, since there's no negative marking, therefore attempt each and every question because you won't be penalized, right? What's the worst that can happen? You might lose a mark, but hey, you never know. You could have, like the Irishman say, the rub of the green. So if that happens, right, then it's basically good for you. You sometimes trust me when I say that 1 mark, That one extra mark can be the difference between passing and failing. It can be the difference between getting a 6.5, or getting a 6. It can be the difference between clearing your dream university's entry requirements or not meeting the requirements. More importantly, it could mean giving the exam once and for all, or giving it again and again. So just think of the capital. Just think of the fit from the financial perspective, and make sure that you attempt all questions. The number 8 questions follow passage order. Okay, so first you stick with the first passage. First you answer questions from 1 to 13. Then you go to passage 2. Then you go to passage 3. So make sure that you attempt your test in a chronological order. Just go with the flow. Just do it sequentially. Okay. Now, point number 9, I will just read it out for now, but I will revisit this afterwards. There are different types of questions. So whether you're a student of IELTS general reading, or whether you're a student of IELTS academic reading, in both cases, there's a certain syllabus. There's certain types of questions that can come which you have to prepare for. 2 of those types are basically called matching headings and matching information. Except for matching headings and matching information, the answers for all other types of reading questions generally come in chronological order. Okay, so use this tip to narrow down your target area, an approach that saves both time and energy. So for example, let me use this thing over here. Let's say I found the answer for question 1 over here. Okay, and let's say I found the answer for question 2 right below it. All right, the upcoming answer will always be below that. This is basically the reading passage which I'm going through for extracting the answer based on the question that is given to me. So let's say I found the answer to question 1 over here, and let's say I find the answer for question 2 over here. Now I'm not being able to find the answer for question 3. Okay, but let's say I find the answer for question 4 somewhere over here. So this is 2, this is 4. Therefore, the answer for question 3 will lie somewhere in this narrow area that is between 2 and 4. So use this tip to narrow down your target area, and this will save your time as well as energy. So previously, you were just looking at the whole passage. Now you're just looking at one particular section, okay? So it really helps. There are certain types in which this approach works, but there are 2 types, matching information and matching headings, in which this doesn't work. So in detail in future, when we will go through all of these in depth, I'll tell you how to decode this approach, okay? Thank you. Next up, like I said, 1 hour time management, right? It's easier said than done. Happens even with the best of us. No matter how much prepared you are, pressure gets to pretty much everyone. So please make sure that you don't read slowly and don't spend too much time on an answer. Considering that you have 40 questions and you have 60 minutes to answer those 40 questions, in which you also have to write down your details on the answer paper, you have to comb through the information, you have to skim and scan, figure out the answer. In these cases, I would say generally do not allocate more than 45 seconds to the process of figuring out a particular answer, okay? Next up, spend less time on earlier questions, as the intensity or complexity of the reading passages increases in chronological order for both academic reading and general reading modules. All right, what I'm trying to say here is, so reading passage 1, reading passage 2, reading passage 3. Moving in chronological order from reading passage 1 all the way to reading passage 3, you will find that the intensity of these passages is increasing. I won't say that passage 1 is the easiest, passage 3 is the most difficult. For me, the words easy and difficult, they're not in my dictionary because it's all relative. It comes down to the amount of effort that you're basically gonna put in, right? So the effort is very important. However, you can say that passage 1 is more doable as opposed to passage 3. The intensity is lower. So make sure that these early passages in both academic and general reading, you spend less time on trying to tackle them, and you spend more time on trying to tackle the passages, the later passages, okay? So make sure, last but not least, that you leave yourself enough time to transfer the questions. Ideally, transfer each passage answers to the answer sheet before moving on to analyze the next passage. Okay, now what some people do is, for example, they went through passage 1. All right, after going through passage 1, what they did was they just wrote the answers on the the question paper itself. Without transferring those answers to the answer sheet, they move on to reading passage 2. They repeat the drill with passage 2, then they repeat the drill with reading passage 3. In the end, you have like 1 minute left, and you have to transfer 40 questions from the question paper to the answer sheet. Then people panic, people make silly mistakes. They will write the answer of question 1 next to question 2. They will do all sorts of catastrophic stuff. Therefore, my humble and professional advice to all of you dear fellows is that once you're done with passage 1, transfer its answers to the answer sheet, then move on to passage 2, repeat the drill, then move on to passage 3, and then transfer its answers to the answer sheet. So you have the last 1 or 2 minutes in which you can basically, like breathe in, breathe out, just take a breather of sorts, okay, just relax and reorient yourself, maybe do a bit of revision if time permits, right? So because at the end of the day, the examiner is entrusted with your answer sheet, not the question papers. That is something that we all need to factor into consideration, okay? Thank you. Next up, make sure that you practice each question type. So what are the different question types for general reading as well as academic reading? We will come to that in a while. Practice outside of home before appearing for the official exam. It teaches you to perform efficiently without letting the distractions get to you. Because the thing is, so initially when I started preparing for my IELTS exam, I used to, just sit in my room, a no noise zone, right, where there used to be pin drop silence so that I could focus, so that I could actually apply myself without any sort of outside distraction. But the fact is, ladies and gentlemen, what we need to understand that no examination environment is virtually 100% noise proof, right? Odds are you could be sitting next to a dude who's coughing, unless you're obviously giving it from an online perspective. Odds are you could be sitting next to someone who's coughing, someone who's, someone who's having a row with the examiner, someone who's literally cracking that water bottle or chewing that, bubble gum in a pretty disgusting manner. So there's always going to be a little bit of noise. So we need to cope up with these distractions and don't let them impair our focus. Yeah, that's very important. So what I would recommend you to do is, for example, maybe if you are traveling in a bus, right, or you just you're sitting in a restaurant, you can maybe give this you can maybe attempt a couple of practice tests so that there's a little bit of noise in the background, and you kind of make yourself mentally strong. Like, you don't let that have a negative impact on your concentration levels. Okay, that is very important. Next up, refer to the MS Word document for finding out the criteria for converting marks into band scores. This is something that we will address later in detail. And obviously, number 16, make sure that you scan backwards for practice. Revision is very important, okay? Sometimes revising your paper, it does improve your band score by a factor of 0.5. So take a deep breath and relax, and make sure that you concentrate and stay focused. This probably brings us to the most important slide in this presentation. What is the syllabus for the IELTS reading module? Be it general reading or be it academic reading, in both cases, this is your syllabus. You have diagram questions, table questions, flowchart completion questions, multiple choice questions, short answer questions, summary completion questions, sentence completion questions, matching information questions, matching heading questions, matching features, as well as writer's views or claims, which has always been an ultimate dilemma for a lot of students. Yes, no, not given, true, false, not given. What are these questions? Examples of these question types. How are we going to answer them? How are we going to ace them? This is something that will be discussed in the upcoming videos in detail. I'll start targeting each and every one of these in depth individually, and then start, discussing them on this platform. So this is another important question, right? A lot of people ask me how to manage that. Hami, how do you manage time in the reading module? So this is another important facet of this exam, right? First of all, like I said, make sure that you do the reading passages in sequence or chronological order. First, do reading passage 1. Once you're done with that, move on to reading passage 2. Then move on to reading passage 3. Because you see, reading passage 1 is the least intense, whereas the intensity of reading passage 3 is the greatest, okay? Your brain, it's a reservoir of finite energy, okay? So trust it and give itself some time to get acclimatized to what it's studying. So make sure you go from a lower level to a higher level, okay? So first of all, do the passages in sequence. So ideally, I would say, based on my experience, allocate 16 minutes to reading passage 1. In 16 minutes, you're going to go through the entire passage. You're going to figure out the answers to the questions. You're going to jot them down on the answer sheet. After 16 minutes, you're going to go to reading passage 2. Give 19 minutes reading passage 2. In 19 minutes, go through the information, figure out the answers to the questions, jot them down on the question paper, the answer booklet, apologies, and then finally move on to reading passage 3. That is, as the whole drill has to be repeated, but this time for 21 minutes, because you have to accommodate a high level of intensity in this case. So 16 plus 19 plus 21, that is 56 minutes. 60 minus 56, if we do the math, that is 4 minutes. So I know this is, once again, easier said than done, but try to reserve the last 4 minutes for revision and rechecking purposes towards a proofread and just see if you missed out anything, okay? It really helps. Proofreading is essential. So let's say if your paper starts at, for example, 8 a.m. in the morning, so by 8:16, you should be done with reading passage 1. 8:35, you should be done with reading passage 2. 8:56, you should be done with all the passages, and the last 4 minutes, you just be, chilling like a G, right? And just trying to, make sure that you have pretty much solved it out. One last, the final component of this presentation before we conclude, the checklist for the reading module. Okay, no matter what scenario we have in our life, be it an exam, be it a presentation, okay, be it a thesis, or be it even a world war or whatever it is, we always need to have a strategy. We always need to have some tactics. We always need to have a battle plan, right? So the game plan is very important for you. In order to be the ultimate game changer and conquer this exam, you really need to have a solid game plan. And for me, what I can do is I can actually offer you a checklist, which really helped me get 38 out of 40. That was an overall band score of 8.5 out of 9 in the IELTS academic reading module. So when attempting questions in the reading passages of both modules, follow the below mentioned steps in the provide sequence in order to maximize your chances of acing the test. The very first step that I would do if I were you in your position, I would, for example, let's say I'm at reading passage 1. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to underline and focus on the instructions. Okay, we need to keep the instructions in our mind. For example, the instructions are saying do not write more than 3 words. So in that case, 3 is the upper limit. You can either write 1 word, you can write 2 words, or you can write 3 words. In any of these 3 formats, your answer will be acceptable, provided that it's obviously the right answer, right? Apart from these 3 techniques, if you follow any other technique, in that case, you could be penalized, right? So that is something that we all need to understand. So number 1, underline and focus on the instructions. Number 2, underline and focus on the headings and the subheadings in the reading passages. When you underline and focus on the headings and the subheadings, that kind of gives you more clarity. It kind of helps you figure out what the information is all about, and that actually improves your focus levels. Okay. Number 3, underline and focus on the keywords in the question statement. Okay. So for example, there's a question, the Taj Mahal or the Badshahi Masjid was built by Dash. Okay, so the keywords could be, in this case, Taj Mahal or Badshahi Masjid. Okay, so the moment you see that stuff in the passage, you're like, okay, these are the keywords. Now the answer must be somewhere around there. So focus on the keywords and try to locate those keywords in the reading passages, and that will often help you come down to the right answer in an effective and quick period of time. Okay. Make short notes next to each paragraphs in order to get the gist of it better. Okay, so for example, there's a paragraph that comprises of, let's say, 7 to 8 lines. Okay, so just make a short note next to it so that you kind of understand what the main message is being conveyed in this paragraph. So when you're trying to figure out the answer to a particular question, you'll just go through all the paragraphs, figure out the main ideas that you've written, and that will save your time and quickly help you extract the right answer. Okay, obviously, when we will practice these tests on an individual basis, then we'll understand this better once I start applying this checklist in the upcoming videos. Number 5, highlight the portions in the reading passages from where you get the answers as excluding matching headings and matching information. The answers for the rest of the reading question types generally come in chronological order. Okay, so if you remember, there was this previous slide, I remember, this one. I said that excluding matching information and matching headings, the answers for all of the types come in chronological order, right? So basically what happens is that the answers will always be based on a certain sequence. Okay, oops, sorry, a bit of technical difficulties. Glad to have that sorted out now. Okay, so apart from matching headings and matching information, for all other types that we went through, right? Talking about matching features, writer's views or claims, sentence completion, summary completion, and so on, right? For all these other question types, the answers will come in sequence. For example, if this is the reading passage, this is the answer for 1, 2 is below it, 3 will be below that, 4 will be below that, right? So basically use this tip to give yourselves more ease in terms of figuring out the right answer. All right, so this is I hope after this video you have understood the basic gist of both the general as well as the IELTS academic reading modules, right? And I hope that some of these pro tips and the checklists that I've shared, they're giving you more clarity as well as direction for all prospective students who want to attempt this test in the near foreseeable future. So courtesy of this, we'll from now onwards in future, I'll be releasing more videos that will be targeting on each and every aspect of the different question types that we talked about in the previous couple of slides, so that hopefully after these sessions you'll find this reading module to be a tad bit more humane and doable. That being said, I would always love your feedback. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe the videos, the channel. And that being said and done, hopefully catch you fellas soon. Okay, thank you very much. You've been a wonderful audience. See you later. Bye-bye.